How many times have you said, "This is it, I'm really quitting this time"? Maybe you tossed those bottles, you flushed your stash, and you really thought you were turning over and you leave this time. But days, even weeks after, you found yourself in exactly the same position as before, drinking again. I've been there too, more times than I could count. What if you had somebody shining a light on the common mistakes that people make, so that you could avoid them yourself? Well, that's what we're here to do today. We're going to look at the most common 5 mistakes that people make during that first week of going alcohol-free, so that you can fully prepare yourself, avoid these mistakes, and be successful on your alcohol-free journey. Meet David. He's been on his own alcohol-free journey for quite some time now, and he's had his own fair share of day one. He's failed on his process, but each time he's learned a lesson, he's identified his mistake, and now he's been alcohol-free successfully for 6 months. But let's rewind a little bit to those first few steps that David took on his alcohol-free journey. David had enough after his own teenage daughter came to him crying, saying that she was scared of him after he had a couple of drinks. He poured every last drop down the drain. He had no real plan in place. He was relying on sheer willpower to get through it, and he made it about a week before he stumbled. David's first mistake is one that so many of us fall into, and it's going on the alcohol-free journey without a plan. Now imagine trying to build a house without a blueprint. It's impossible. Yet we expect the alcohol-free journey just to materialize through sheer willpower. But David, he's a businessman. He plans his days meticulously. But the journey towards being alcohol-free, he thought he could just wing it. Now let me ask you, would you open a restaurant without having a business plan first? Would you launch a startup with no financial projections, no market research? Of course not. So why do we think that becoming alcohol-free will just fall into place without any intentional design? Here's what David learned. He needed an alcohol-free blueprint. Now this isn't just a checkbox, this is the architectural plans of your new life. Now David was armed with his blueprint, he was ready for round 2. And he made it a few weeks longer than before. But soon that familiar emptiness started to creep in. Loneliness blanketed his evenings like a heavy fog. Sitting at home alone without alcohol, time seemed to have been paused. David's thoughts started to wander to simpler times. Carefree nights, laughing and joking, bonding with his friend over a couple of bottles. He started to romanticize the good times and started to forget about all of the negatives that alcohol was bringing in his life. Because of David's loneliness, by week 3, his resolve to quit drinking had started to wilt. An old friend invited him out for a drink, and he said to himself, "It's just one won't hurt." And sadly, he slipped. So where did David go wrong this time? David's second mishap was isolating himself and simply not keeping himself busy. When you remove alcohol, you've got to fill that void with something. Meaningful activities, new routines, healthy connections to start taking root. And that's when your mind starts playing tricks with you, convincing yourself that one drink is not a big deal. Don't believe those thoughts. If you're watching this video, for us, one drink is never harmless. So what did David learn from this? He knew that he needed to nurture his friendship and his connection, even if that meant navigating some socially awkward situation. David joined a hiking group. He started to take golf lessons. He started to coach the under-15 baseball team. He started to fill up his calendar with meaningful activities where he would feel connection with those around him. And he joined a community of other people who were on the alcohol-free journey. With more miles behind him, David was feeling even more confident on his alcohol-free journey. His mood lifted, his sleep improved, and he regained a sense of pride in himself. But just as he was starting to feel really comfortable on his alcohol-free journey, another obstacle came up: success. He landed a great new contract for his business, definitely a cause for celebration. His client insisted on taking him out for dinner and toasting the new contract with champagne. In that moment, with the champagne flutes raised for a toast, David froze. His mind faltered. He was caught off guard, unsure about what to do, and so he took a sip of his champagne as the client was watching him. One innocent sip, one simple sip, unraveled days of restraint. Soon he found himself back to where he started. Where did David go wrong this time? Let's break it down. David slipped up by not preparing sufficiently for all of the potential triggers. You see, you can't always control when you're going to encounter triggers. A celebration, dinner, a friend offering you a drink while watching the game. A stressful day when your only thought is, "I deserve a drink." When you least expect it, these triggers will ambush you and they'll put you to the test unless you've planned ahead. David learned quickly that he needed to prepare himself for all of those potential triggers that were going to come his way. And he made his if-then plan. If this happens, then I'll do this. He planned ahead so the next time he was in the same situation with another client, he knew exactly what he was going to do. It was such a simple but powerful tool that he needed to use to ground himself, to stop his mind from wandering into its only one drink and onto autopilot where his mind would drift back to his old habit. After each slip, David brushed himself off and got back onto the path of the alcohol-free journey, a little bit wiser and more prepared for the next time. But he was starting to grow wary of day ones. He asked himself, how many more day ones can I have? How many more times will I slip? But this time he was determined. He was determined he was going to make that 1 month mark. And he did. A massive 30 days. A big hurdle he hadn't got over for as long as he could remember. But as we all know, being alcohol-free isn't about racking up the days. It's about incorporating it into a new lifestyle for ourselves, which David learned the hard way soon after. Work was stressful, tensions were high, and instinctively David found himself reaching for a drink to take the edge off. And in that moment, he caught himself with that hand around the glass. Years ago, David had created this ritual of getting home from the office and having that one drink to take the edge off. His habitual mind, his autopilot was kicking in, and he just reached for that drink as he had so many times before. Thankfully, before it was too late, David's consciousness kicked in. He realized what he was doing and how far he had come, and he didn't want to go into those old patterns again. It was a dangerously close call. Now, what was the pitfall that David fell into this time? Well, David came face to face with his old habit. Like deeply worn trails through a forest, our neurological habits carve pathways in our brains. The more we repeat them, the more entrenched they become. These habitual brain patterns activate automatically when we're triggered, often without our full awareness. That's what happened with David. So how do we override those autopilot habits that we have? By forging new trails of conscious decision. Step by step, recreating new wiring in our brains. With awareness and vigilance, David caught himself mid-habit. He paused. He took a breath, and he chose a decision that's aligned with his goals and his values, not his habit. Over time, these new choices will become our new normal, and they'll become so much more easier to do than at the beginning. But it takes effort and awareness to leave those old habits behind and to start creating new ones. Progress isn't always linear, and that takes us to our next pitfall. Despite making it 45 days alcohol-free, David hadn't quite made it to the elusive summit of long-term alcohol-free. But he was finally beginning to realize that this mountain, it didn't have a peak. It's not as if you could climb to the top and then you've conquered the mountain, like tick that box, it's done. David started to learn that instead of chasing milestones of 60 days alcohol-free, 90 days alcohol-free, 6 months, 12 months, he started to focus on the day in front of him. This is the final pitfall that so many of us fall into, making alcohol-free a destination rather than enjoying the journey and embracing it as a lifestyle. You don't win at alcohol-free when you get to 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, a year. There's no winning in it. It literally is a day-by-day lifestyle choice. And David learned to stop chasing those milestones and instead nurture his health, nurture those relationships, and really focus on his career and his own potential and progression in life. With his own eyes on the path in front of him, instead of focusing on that peak summit, he started to enjoy the day-to-day, the increased clarity of thought that he brought to his business every day, the increased energy that he brought to the sports and the gym environments on his day-to-day, the presentness when he was with somebody that he brought to when he was nurturing those relationships. He started to embrace all of the new changes and the positive benefits of the alcohol-free lifestyle instead of chasing that dream of 1 year alcohol-free. So these are the 5 mistakes you need to avoid if you want to be successful on your own alcohol-free journey. The first one is have a plan. The second one, don't isolate yourself and start to pack your social calendar. The third, plan sufficiently for your triggers. Fourth, identify your habits and learn how to pattern interrupt, so you're not just going back onto autopilot and back to those old habits. Finally, stop looking for those milestones of being alcohol-free and start to incorporate it as a lifestyle. And if you've tried to quit on your own before and it's just not been successful and you want my help, feel free to reach out for me. I have a calendar link in the description below where you'll be able to book a free consultation. We can have a conversation where I can get to know your situation a little bit better and see if it would be a fit for us to work together going forward. So if that's for you, the link is in the description below. And if you're not quite ready for that amount of support, subscribe to the channel and just binge watch all of my videos.